in 1993, if a spouse dies, their children don't inherit their halves.
Here's what I've unpacked from the title issues, and this is coming from a bunch of different angles. So one, we were wrong about some law that if one person is married to one person and they only have kids with that person, something about 1993.
Yeah, it changed in 1990. After 1993, if they only have kids together, it's not community. The dying spouse's attributes don't transfer to the children; they stay with the partner.
So the partner gets 100%.
100%.
When the spouse dies.
Hold up, is that like stepkids?
Hold on. This is why, because that's information we got from the title.
Right.
So
that was their first salvo of defense.
First salvo of defense.
They're like, boom, boom, boom.
Would you,
it's
before
not
we
our
move
fault.
on, would you explain that a little bit more?
I don't know the answer to your question because the stepkids is a different problem.
Hold on,
What you just said.
What you just said.
Okay.
Explain what you just said.
So they called me on Wednesday and like, hey, well, this ain't our problem because in 1993, if a spouse dies, their children don't inherit their half. So if you had 4 kids, we've seen this before in other cases, and it's still this case if they were married before and have kids outside that marriage. If one spouse dies, their kids split their portion of it.
So they get 50% and the spouse gets 50%.
The spouse would get 50%, and if there's 4 kids, they would each get, 12.5%.
Yeah.
So, but after 1993,
they passed the law.
The Texas Property Code says that it will be broken up this way, and all of those assets go to the spouse.
Yes.
That's what they told us on Wednesday.
That's title company's defense. So, all right. Now, the reason why this is all important, we're going to make a very valid point. You're going to learn a lot here while we unpack this. All right. So that's a spouse that's been married the whole time and only have kids with each other. Mm-hmm. How would they know if they only had kids with each other? Like, where are my kids at? Y'all, you've met my kids, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Where are they at?
Like right now?
Yeah.
Groesbeck?
Yeah.
School, Groesbeck, I'm
Except
guessing.
the one that might be in Arkansas.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I consider as much content as we have on the internet by now. The Hooters waitress from 2009 or 10 or whatever that was would have done found me, but she was engaged to somebody, and he's probably raising my kid.
I got a really good story about that. I'll tell you later.
Yeah. So, I mean, every year that passes, that goes by, that she doesn't reach out, I just deduct 1% off of 100%. So what are we at? Like 90% now? 88%? 88% chance that I have a kid out there. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
So,
okay.
But how do you find that out? How does title know how many kids somebody has?
They asked the question from the seller.
But what is this called?
Well, if there's a dead person involved, and it's affidavit of heirship.
Was there one done?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
And if not, there's a seller's information letter that they would have filled out.
Do you think they would close any title company in the country? Do you think they would close something with a marriage, okay, in place? Do you think they would close something with a dead spouse without doing an affidavit of heirship?
No.
What do you think?
I don't think so.
I don't think
pretty
they
standard. Every time there's a death,
they because that's the only way they know that they can. It's a
there's
CYA.
not other.
Yeah,
there's
because
not a side kid.
And people have to understand that title company, we call them title policies. It is an insurance policy. We're paying them for an insurance policy, and just like your car, you get in a wreck, they'll try to find every way out of that they can. But that's what we're paying for. It protects the seller and the buyer in most cases.
Yes, and the lender.
And the lender, correct.
And the lender has the best policy of all.
Absolutely.
If everyone's acting in good faith, like
No, how could the lender act in bad faith?
not obviously not the lender, but like if the seller,
If it's
you
arm's
don't
length.
know, you're like, I got 2 kids.
Yeah, I'm a good faith purchaser. I'm a good faith purchaser. I'm not over here pulling on the strings of anything. I don't have like every single bit of communication I have with this human is via text or a recorded phone call. You know what I mean? Like you bring something where we worked a side deal to cut an air out. You know what I mean? It won't exist. It's not out there. It doesn't happen. If somebody tells us about a missing heir or something like that, we go do affidavit of heirships. Do you know how to do affidavit of heirships?
Absolutely.
We get them with title. We say, hey, here's the phone numbers. Here's the affidavit of heirship.
They approve it or they don't.
They approved or not.
And half the times you'll do two or three affidavits of heirship, and they say, "Oh, we need 7 more."
Yes.
And then the title underwriters go back and look at obituaries. They will pull up. I mean, there's websites that categorize the obituaries from people's deaths, and they'll go back and look. Okay, it says they were survived by this person, this person, this person. They will do the research to see if they're alive, because sometimes it splits down to a son or daughter also had 10 sons and daughters that got stuff, and it gets very convoluted very quick. They do not write these policies lightly.
And if you have a minor in the chain of title, then you got to go before a judge before the person that has custody of that minor can even sign away that minor's portion of that property.
Do you remember the one I did in Graham?
I do not.
Okay. It was the first affidavit of heirship I'd ever done. The people that were living in the house were not actual heirs, but they were considered heirs by the state rules because they had lived with them so long.
Yeah, we're getting into that.
Yeah.
We're getting into that. So let's not confuse the people.
Okay.
So now we have a title company that claims this 1993 law. They're throwing their hands up at it. This doesn't. What I think happened, they missed the granddad altogether. I don't think they knew he exists. I think the family, the party that sold it, did not mention a deceased spouse that could be, because when they think about it, when they ask, they say it's not Candy's dad that died. It's the step granddad. You get what I'm saying? So yes. How long ago did he pass away? Where's he at? How long have they been divorced?
She told us on that podcast. I think it was.
No, I'm not talking about her. We have not talked to Candy. Okay, Candy, when asked by title about her father, where if he's alive, they've been divorced before the mother bought the property. You get what I mean? Mm-hmm. She willfully probably omitted the step grandfather from it. That's just a theory. I don't have any basis. Okay. So the step granddad, now this is where it's like, okay, in the state of Texas, I was wrong about this as well. In the state of Texas, if I own property, okay, and I've owned it for however long I've owned it, and then I marry Braxton here, they just made that legal, Braxton. Congratulations. I marry Braxton. He does not get half of my real estate that I already own, according to something that somebody told me. Now, I have not looked at that law. I don't know if that's true or not. But here's what I do know. That doesn't happen automatically either. Who gets to tell you whether or not Braxton has any rights to that property?
The judge.
A judge. A title company will they close with that marriage in the loop?
No.
Not going to happen. Like, Braxton's deceased and was married, they're still not, they're going to go through the affidavit of heirships. They're going to button that up and get something on the record if they know Braxton exists.
Whether it be affidavit of airships or a court order
Okay,
something. A higher power saying, hey, no, this is.
They're going to make the heirs, they're going to CYA if they know you exist. They're going to cover that ass. You can believe it. How many transactions have we closed together in 7 years? Hundreds? Is it 1,000 yet?
It's probably 400, 450, somewhere in there.
Total.
It's a guess.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, we've done 200 this year.
How many of them have we had this scenario where there's a marriage? Cameron, right now. Cameron, we buy it, okay? There's a divorce decree in place, okay? A marriage with a divorce decree spelling out what happens to the property. We buy it with the title policy. Okay. We get ready to sell it. What are they asking for? You didn't see it on the title commitment. You don't ever read those things. The divorce came back up from the purchase. The legal description, the description in the divorce decree only had an address. It didn't have the legal description of the property.
That sucks.
So it only had an address. So the underwriters were asking them to go back to the transaction before ours, okay, and verify or get an affidavit signed, which is sworn testimony, that it's the same property. At the address.
Who signs that affidavit?
The title company.
Okay.
So I thought it was going to have to be the seller, the original seller. Well, it sucked, but it's the title company that has to sign that, or anybody has to sign it. So it has to be rectified at that moment. So when there's a fucking marriage involved, regardless of when they're married, they're going to get something to cover that ass in writing, and it's going to hold up closing. Now, I've not reviewed all this. I'm not an attorney. I'm just saying, typically we hear about these things. True or false?
hear about them immediately.
Title brings it up.
They'll say, "Hey, everything's stopped. We can't do this." And we ask Kitty why isn't this closing, or she brings it up she updates us every Monday and every Thursday-ish on where we're at in all
where we're at
titles.
on all of our closings. We're waiting on this affidavit of airship. This hasn't been approved. You know, they're trying to unbutton this marriage, this step marriage. Okay.